When I went to school, I had what was called a major study. What that meant was, what I planned to do with my life afterwards I studied. It was called my major study, and I think it was called a major study because I had so many hours of that particular study that I had accomplished. Now I also had 2 minor studies. And when I got out of school, I remember one company wanted to hire me for my minor study, but I didn't want that. Did you ever wonder what you're going to be doing in the kingdom of God? I mean, what's God going to ask us to do? What will be our assignment? When I was new in the church, I remember hearing, of course we were a much bigger congregation then, and you didn't really know what to talk about, so you listened to people more than you talked. But I remember a number of people, and after giving it some thought, I'd say I probably heard a half a dozen times where someone said, all I want to be in the kingdom of God is a gatekeeper. And I didn't think much about that. I know at the time I thought to myself, well, I don't know, because I wasn't told what I was going to do, but it sounds to me like what he's saying is, what this individual was saying was, I don't really want a lot of responsibility. Well, then we sang a song in choir, both locally and up at the feast. It talked about the time to come, and it said the gates are open wide. That song was Jerusalem. I thought, well, then you wouldn't really need a gatekeeper if the gates are open wide. Well, I also read in Revelation that we were going to be kings and priests. I think there's some responsibility there. Jesus Christ told of being over a number of cities. I thought to myself, there's got to be some responsibility there also. I'd like to start today by turning to Isaiah, the 30th chapter. And as we read these 2 verses, understand, Mr. Robin Weber for quite a while had these 2 verses as a theme for the articles that he would read in the Beyond Today, he would write in the Beyond Today magazine. Isaiah 30, verse 20, it says, Isaiah 30, verse 20, though the Lord gives, this is speaking of the future time, a future time, though the Lord gives you the bread of adversity and the water of affliction, yet your teachers, your teachers, they will not be moved into a corner anymore, but your eye will see your teachers. Teachers. Your ears will hear a word behind you saying, this is the way, walk in it. Whenever you turn to the right hand or whenever you turn to the left, who are these teachers? Who would these teachers be? My purpose today, brethren, is to consider what our job will be in the kingdom. Now, I'm not saying our only job, and I'm not saying it will last forever, but one of our jobs. The benefit will be to help us prepare for that today, and my title is Our Major Study. Our major study. Let's turn to Hebrews, the 5th chapter, please. Read another verse that we're very familiar with. Very familiar with. Hebrews, the 5th chapter. Hebrews 5, verse 12. We read, for though by this time, you ought to be teachers. Who's he talking to? You need someone to teach you again the first principles of the oracles of God. And you have to come and eat milk, not solid food. I was baptized in 1977, February 10th, by Mr. Mitchell Knapp. And at the time, after we were baptized, we were having a conversation. I remember he said to me, now don't think that just because somebody's been in the church for 2 years that they should be perfect, because they won't be. And I remember thinking to myself, how long does it take? Let's turn to 2 Timothy. 2 Timothy, there were an awful lot of what I'm going to call first-generation Christians in that day. We were all new people, most of us. If you found someone that had been around for 2 years, that was a long time to us. 2 Timothy, the 2nd chapter, verse 24. And the question I have for all of us, me first, is, am I a servant of God? And we can all ask that same question. Am I a servant of God? Verse 24. A servant of the Lord must not quarrel, but be gentle to all, able to teach. There's that word again, teach. I'm going to give you as a reference, but you don't have to turn there. Titus 2, verse 3 is an example. That means men and women both. We teach first by example. If we don't set the example, the words are not going to have a lot of value. When I was a kid, I will quickly say my mother never said this, but I heard it. And I'd be at somebody's house, I'd be with a group of people, and some other mother would say, do as I say, not as I do. And I remember even as a small child, I thought, that doesn't sound right. We teach, brethren, first by example. If we don't set the example, the words are going to have little value. Let's look at Proverbs, please, the 23rd chapter. If our example isn't there, the words don't mean much. It isn't do as I say, not as I do. Proverbs 23, verse 26. My son, I have in parentheses my student, as disciples we're all students. Give me your heart, I have in parentheses your inner being. Let your eyes observe my ways. And I have in parentheses, not my words. Observe my ways. Let's look at John 13, please. And these will be the words of Jesus Christ. A powerful two-letter verb that he uses. And he uses it twice here. A powerful two-letter verb. John 13, verse 15. John 13:15. For I have given you an example that you should do. There's that word. You should do, not say, as I have done to you. Most assuredly, I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, nor is he who sent greater than he who sent him. If you know these things, blessed are you if you do. There's that word again. If you do them, not speak them. Do what? Teach by example, teach by word. Jesus didn't say to the 12, you guys go wash each other's feet. He didn't do that. Biblical instruction, as it applies to everyday life, is what this is speaking of. This is how we all learn. When I first was new in the church, everything I learned, it seemed it was so overwhelming. There was so much. But through the years, I've come to easily understand, as I think we all have, that really Christianity is a way of life. It's how we live. We're learning how to live. You know, you watch the politicians, I don't mean to pick on anybody, but it gets so tiresome. We just elect a president, and 2 years later there's 20 more of them want to line up and say, no, I can do it better. I can do the job. I'm better. Me. Many of the examples that we read of what Jesus Christ taught were spur-of-the-moment things, or so it seemed in the Bible. I don't think they were accidents, really. Consider the woman at the well. She walked up, he said, I'm thirsty, can I have a drink of water? And what followed was an enormously powerful story. People asked about taxes. He told them about the gift of God. How about the woman caught in adultery? That took quite a while. He wrote some things in the sand, and it doesn't tell us what he wrote, but I think we have a pretty good idea. God's words should be visible and available at all times. Stories help us remember things. If I'd ask anybody in this room to tell us the story of the prodigal son, who couldn't do it? I'm not asking for a show of hands. I'm not saying we'd get it word for word, but we know the story. We know how it works, and we understand the power of the love of God. Brethren, it's not my hope, by any means, to stand for the next 1,000 years in a classroom with a piece of chalk in my hand and a blackboard behind me. And I'm sure we're all going to be given many God-given responsibilities. But I do strongly believe that whatever we're going to be doing, our example and our words must be capable of directing the ones that we are with, the ones who see us and then the ones who hear us, to righteousness and the love of God. And I can think of no more excellent opportunity.